Morning. So, yesterday, David had worked with Matthew 22, the parable of the wedding feast. And I'm going to add a small facet to it and cross-reference it with James. So, we were talking about the king. So, I'll just reread the story. The kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who arranged a marriage for his son and sent his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding, and they were not willing to come. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, "Tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen, my fatted calf are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding." But they made light of it and went their way, one to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed them. And when the king heard about it, he was furious. And he sent out his armies and destroyed those murderers and burned up their city. And so the story continues, but in this section is where I'm going to go today. With the king preparing a banquet like that, first he would have invited people. He would have sent out a pre-notice, kind of like today we would get the save the date. It would be like that. So he would have sent out an invitation to whomever he was inviting, and then let them know that this was coming, and then he went and made all the preparations. And this wasn't something that happened, in 10 minutes or even a day. There could have been, several months in between. I'm not sure culturally. I know culturally it's very different than how we do a wedding now and how we would do an announcement of this event. But either way, he went and said, hey, the feast is ready. And, when the king puts on a feast, it's an amazing event. This is not something to dread. It's not something to go, oh, another formal affair. It's a big deal. First of all, the king would be, in a celebration of his son's marriage, he would be very generous. Mm-hmm. There would be a presentation of foods and fruits and vegetables and breads that most of the people, even the noblemen in the village, potentially never even saw or tasted. I mean, it would be an amazing event, not something that one would casually throw away. So the fact that the people who were invited didn't come, I could see, one or two of them had a sudden emergency, like, oh, my wife is really sick, or, my favorite cow is calving, or something of that nature. But to have a vast number of people who accepted the invitation and then go, yeah, I'm not coming. Especially to the king, because, back in the day, insulting the king was pretty much a death sentence. You're going to insult the king, and he can just go, off with their heads, and you're done. So that's a very risky event. But beyond that, it's why didn't they want to come and receive his wonderful gift? The king was offering this amazing gift. You're talking about people who sometimes, so you got the noblemen that still ate pretty well and, had people under them. But you think about the people who work in the fields and, have their family, and some of them might have been living on a piece of bread or two a day. They'd have a little bit of flour and oil, and, they'd make their little flat thing on the fire. And, some of the people in this society, on the lower end of the society, ate meat once a year or twice a year. We have meat every day, but they don't have meat every day. They had meat during the time when they went for the big family sacrifice, because when you bring the sacrifice, a portion of it went to the Lord, and a portion of it went to the priest, and a portion of it went back to the family. And that would be the time of the year where the family would celebrate. It's a huge celebration that, hey, they get to have some meat, and they got to really enjoy it. This is even beyond one of the special feasts. This is a feast because his son was getting married, and he was looking for people to rejoice. My son's getting married. The son very likely is future king, right? And it was a big celebratory event. And so where I was cross-referencing that was back to James. In James 1, James 1 in context, he's talking about temptation and sin. It's kind of a funny place where, because verse 17 is going to be my focus, but it's kind of a funny place where it lies, because it's in this context of a cycle of sin. So I'm going to go back to 12 and say, blessed is the man. So James 1 verse 12, blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. So pretty much that's, if you're tempted to do the wrong thing and you make hard choices to do the right thing, the reaping of that, the consequence of that is going to be a crown of life. It's a good choice. It's a good choice to do the right thing when you're presented with the wrong thing. And then he develops it more. Let no one say when he's tempted, I'm tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. God does not set us up to fail, ever. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. We're drawn away. We're drawn to be tempted by the sinful desires of our own heart, by selfishness, by the sin nature, by the things that we're raised with in the culture around us. And when the desire is conceived, so a desire is there, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, brings death. So that whole consequences in sowing and reaping. Do not be deceived, my brothers. Okay? This is verse 17. Every good gift, every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of his creation. So we've got this context of, this wonderful verse about every good and perfect gift is from God, comes down from the Father of lights, in the midst of this cycle of sin. Okay? And then we look back here at the king. Okay? So the king has this wonderful feast, this wonderful banquet, this wonderful gift to give to people. And, it's a good and perfect gift. There's no what's the word? Hooks. There's no expectations. There's no hidden agenda here. The king didn't invite the people to the son's feast because of a hidden agenda. He was just celebrating his son, celebrating the wedding, and prepared, sacrificed from his own resources to bless his son. And God sacrifices from his own resources. In fact, he sacrificed his son and for a time his relationship with his son. Why? So we could receive the good and perfect gift of being reconciled to him and eternity with him. The best, most important gift of all. And that is a good and perfect gift. And there are numbers of other things that the Lord puts in our lives that are good and perfect gifts. Some we recognize as good and perfect gifts, and some we don't. And we want to be careful not to cherry pick the gifts from the Lord and walk through them as he gives them to us. But I don't want to digress because I can't develop that one quite as well. My point here is that the king in the story had a good and perfect gift to give to people, and people spurned it. And our King, our God, has good and perfect gifts for us, and we take the ones that we like and have a good package, and we can reject the ones that we don't like and don't have a good package. But in this passage, this wonderful little verse comes in the midst of a passage on a cycle of sin.
Yes.
So that verse wasn't just stuck in there for no reason. It's there because the context matters. And so we have like in this cycle of sin that we've got here, we have a good and perfect gift from God. Fruit of the Spirit. That's a good and perfect gift. We have to choose to walk in it. Part of the fruit of the Spirit is making the decision to say, this is the principle that lives in my life. Am I willing to walk along with it? Am I going to choose how I feel in the moment? Am I going to choose the desire to whatever? Or am I going to choose to say no to my inside desire and yes to self-control, or yes to kindness, or yes to gentleness, or yes to walking in love? And that's not an easy thing to do, but it's a good and perfect gift to have the fruit of the Spirit. It's our good and perfect gift to have free will. And it's our good and perfect gift to say, hey, I'm going to choose the right thing, and I'm going to offer that back to the Lord. That's how, what can we give God? We can give God our free will to say, hey, with my free will, I choose you. With my free will, I choose to walk in your good and perfect gift, even when it doesn't look like a good and perfect gift. Going through a hard time and having to make a tough decision on what to do when my emotions want to do one thing and the principles in the Word tell me to do another. Every time I choose the principles in the Word, I'm adding earned authority. I'm killing my flesh, which I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm accepting good gifts from the Lord and all the different packages it's formed in, so that the enemy can't hijack and go, oh, you're going to cherry pick gifts from God? Cool. I'm going to take stuff away from you, because he does. So that's the small nuance that I wanted to add to it today. And I bless your day. And may we each of us recognize the good and perfect gifts from God and choose them and walk in them, and to recognize the principles in the Word and to choose and to walk in them, and to not cherry pick. We want to be careful that we walk in the fullness of what the Lord has for us. And it's very hard when you've got something consistently difficult in your life to say, oh, surely God doesn't mean for me to walk through this. I'm going to find a way out of it. Sometimes he does mean for you to walk through it, and you need to seek him, and you need to walk in discernment, and you need to ask him.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, my dear?
I do not.
Okay. Well, thank you all today, and bless your day. In Jesus' name.